Hi, and welcome to Mary Trump Live. I'm not Mary. I'm Brian Karam sitting in for Mary today. And thanks for allowing me into your living rooms, bedrooms, or wherever you are watching this wonderful broadcast. This is Mary Trump Live. Well, gee, Donald Trump's latest government shutdown is history, folks. Sure, it was brief, but Trump remains a historic president. No one has ever had as many government shutdowns as Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Donnie is making money off the president like you wouldn't believe. No one believes it. But it's true. He made reportedly more than $2 billion already off the presidency in his first year. Think about that. There's also talk of nationalizing elections, limiting liberties, more out of the Epstein files, less out of Trump. Trump believes in the Constitution, however, and look, hell, it's just Tuesday. Oh, well, let's dive in. The House of Representatives passed a large funding package this afternoon to end the brief government shutdown that began over the weekend. The vote was 217 to 214. Trump signed it this afternoon in a meeting flanked by his favorite fans and fawning celebrities who fawned wildly over his actions. I'm telling you, it looked like something out of Freaks. Anyway, the legislation funds most of the federal government through the end of September. One exception is the Department of Homeland Security, which receives only a short 2-week extension. That sets up a really tight negotiating window for Congress as Democrats push for changes to DHS following the fatal shooting of 2 Americans by federal agents in Minneapolis. Under the deal, DHS funding is set to expire again on February 13th. The procedural rule vote added late drama, underscoring how narrow the House GOP's one-vote margin has become. The vote was held open for a short period after Republican John Rose of Tennessee unexpectedly joined Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie in voting no. Rose said he was frustrated that the Senate had not acted on the SAVE Act, which would require proof of citizenship to vote. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the shutdown is over for now, with funding for the Department of Homeland Security being pushed off for just 2 weeks. How do I respond to that? Well, to be honest, Donald Trump has also claimed that no one has done more for immigration than Donald Trump, that we've had 0 people crossing the border illegally, and that he's upset that he's getting grief for deporting people because he said Obama, Bush, Biden all deported more people than he did. And while he factually may be correct, let's tell him why we're upset with him. No one in the United States is upset that Donald Trump would want to deport dangerous felons, murderers, cutthroats, thieves. Everybody is kind of for that. But the difference between him and the previous administrations, well, when they did it, no Americans got shot. There were no Gestapo-like tactics in the street, and they followed due process. Maybe that's a lesson for Donnie. An Emirati-backed investment firm bought a 49% stake in the Trump's family cryptocurrency company, World Liberty Financial. A $500 million deal signed by Eric Trump just days before Donald Trump's 2025 inauguration gave UAE-linked officials board seats in the company. The deal coincided with major Trump administration negotiations to export advanced AI chips to the UAE, raising alarm among ethics experts and Democrats about blurred lines between U.S. foreign policy and the Trump family's private business interests. Go figure. Here's Julian Tidd on MS Now with more.
Even after a year, when a lot of insider dealing and soft corruption has become almost normalized within the administration in ways we haven't seen before, this story still has the ability to shock quite a lot. And I think it's partly because of the blatant nature of it. It's partly because it underscores a degree to which the American administration is increasingly acting like Gulf states, not the other way around. And it's also striking because when I was in the World Economic Forum in Davos late last month, it was very clear from the American administration officials who were there that they actually prefer dealing with a number of the Gulf states these days to dealing with Europe, never mind the traditional American-European alliance. And one of them actually said to me, we find it much easier to talk to the Gulf states because they're more rational and they can make quick decisions and we can get business done quickly. And so there's a bigger pivot going on right now in the Trump administration towards the Gulf states. And you're seeing that through things like the licensing of chips.
Well, the White House and World Liberty deny any quid pro quo. Congressional Democrats are calling for investigations, with critics arguing the arrangement represents a serious conflict of interest. The thing you really have to look at is the fact that this cryptocurrency is tethered to the dollar. So what Donald Trump has in fact put together is a money laundering scheme. You get the crypto, you transfer it to dollars, and he takes some money off the top. And where are the profits from the oil in Venezuela going? Oh yeah, crypto. So it's not only a conflict of interest, it's just a money laundering scheme, plain and simple. According to NBC News, and you're going to love this one, prosecutors in Paris are investigating potential criminal offenses tied to activity on Elon Musk's social media platform X, including complicity in the possession and distribution of child sexual abuse images, the creation of sexual deep fakes, denial of crimes against humanity, and alleged organized data fraud. Go figure. As part of that investigation, prosecutors have asked Musk to appear for questioning. A voluntary summons was also issued for former ex-CEO Linda Yaccarino to address whether the platform is complying with French law. Request follows a search of X's Paris offices earlier this morning by the prosecutor's cybercrime unit, working with French police, cybercrime investigators, and Europol. Musk and Yaccarino have been asked to appear in Paris during the week of April 20th. Prosecutors didn't say whether they can compel either one of them to attend. Maybe they'll be tried in absentia. I think it's just Elon Musk getting upset that he wasn't ever allowed to Epstein Island, but what do I know? Speaking of Epstein Island, former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify in a House investigation into convicted sex offender Jeff Epstein. The move comes as the Clintons face a potential House vote that could have led to criminal contempt of Congress charges for refusing to testify. The investigation is being led by the House Oversight Committee, chaired by Representative James Comer, who has continued to press for contempt proceedings. Gosh, what a nice-looking fellow. Attorneys for the Clintons say they agreed to appear for depositions at a future date if the committee refrained from moving forward with contempt charges. Comer said no final agreement has been reached and that he's not yet dropping the possibility of criminal referrals. If approved by the House and prosecuted by the Justice Department, which it is Trump's Justice Department, this is Bill Clinton, contempt charges could carry substantial fines and possible jail time. As negotiations continue, the House Rules Committee postponed advancing the contempt resolutions. Today, Donald Trump in the Oval Office said he kind of likes Bill Clinton, not real fond of Hillary Clinton. And look, whatever happens here, if they violated the law, they should be prosecuted. But I think it's awful funny that two people that have been convicted of nothing are talking about facing jail time when a convicted criminal in the White House has got none. Under the Constitution, elections are governed primarily by state law and administered locally by county and municipal officials across thousands of precincts in all 50 states. Donald Trump, however, has long promoted false claims that U.S. elections are riddled with fraud and that Democrats are conspiring to allow undocumented immigrants to vote. Just today in the White House, he said, stay tuned. Anyway, last week, FBI agents seized ballots and other 2020 election records from an election center in Fulton County, Georgia, prompting the stay tuned comment today. The New York Times reported that Trump later spoke by phone with the agents involved, including Tulsi Gabbard, praising and thanking him. What the hell was Gabbard doing there? We still don't know. At the same time, the Justice Department is demanding that multiple states, including Minnesota, turn over their full voter rolls as the administration seeks to build a national voter file. In March, Trump signed an executive order seeking major changes to election rules, including requiring documentary proof of citizenship and mandating that mail ballots be received by the close of polls on Election Day. If that were the case, he probably would have lost, but never mind. It's giving me agita thinking about it. The courts have largely blocked these efforts. In August, he wrote that he wanted to end mail-in voting and potentially eliminate voting machines. Now Trump is calling for the Republican Party to nationalize voting in the United States. A podcast released yesterday by Dan Bongino, Oingo Boingo, Dan Oingo Boingo. Trump urged Republicans to take over voting procedures in what he described as at least 15 states, though he did not name them. Let's remember what Trump said yesterday. So roll the clip and listen to him sounding like a chipmunk. Hit it.
These people were brought to our country to vote, and they vote illegally. And amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. And we have states that are so crooked, and they're counting votes. We have states that I won that show I didn't win. Now you're going to see something in Georgia where they were able to get, with a court order, the ballots. You're going to see some interesting things come out. But, like the 2020 election, I won that election by so much. Everybody does it.
No, nobody knows it. It's the lie that he has. I remember asking him in the White House, why is he so delusional? Now he's got people feeding into his delusions. That election was certified as clean by everyone, including most Republicans. Now, let's listen to what White House press secretary, no, I can't call her that, White House PEP secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters this afternoon in a gaggle just outside of the West Wing. And watch for the part when she says, however. Hit the tape.
But to be clear, he does believe the state should oversee elections.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
Let's see. This is called the U.S. Constitution. And Article 1, Section 4, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. Yes, see, Donald Trump today said he doesn't know why. The nation hasn't done this before. He obviously doesn't know what's in the Constitution. When Leavitt was pressed on what exactly Trump meant when he said Republicans should nationalize the voting, take a look at this.
What does President Trump mean when he says Republicans ought to nationalize voting? What does that look like in practice?
What the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term. And he spoke with the speaker directly about that yesterday, about the need to get that bill on the floor for a vote, because it provides very common sense measures for voting in our country, such as voter ID. I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would disagree with the idea of requiring citizens of this country to present an ID before casting a ballot in a federal election, or frankly in any election. And that's something the president wants to see happen. So that's what he was referring to.
And I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would come to any conclusion other than the fact that Leavitt lies. That's not what Donald Trump was talking about. But let's take a look at the SAVE Act. House Resolution 22, otherwise known as the SAVE Act or the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, requires documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Documents like a valid U.S. passport or a birth certificate, not just an attestation. A standard driver's license would not count as proof of citizenship. Only certain enhanced license, the real IDs that explicitly show citizenship would qualify, meaning many driver's license would not be sufficient. Not all of them are real IDs anymore or have yet to become those. Many Americans don't have a passport. Others don't know. I don't know where my birth certificate is, and it's not that easy to obtain one. Without one of these documents, you could not register to vote. And this wouldn't apply only to first-time voters, it would also apply when updating or correcting voter registration. That's a major change from current law, which already requires people to attest under penalty of perjury that they are citizens, but does not require in-person documentation. You see, when you're in a hurry, you're coming home from work, how many people carry around their passport? I know you can do it, but it's a pain in the butt. And the idea is to make voting easier for citizens, not harder. That's called voter suppression. And that's what this is all about. The SAVE Act has passed the House, but it has not become law. It must be voted on in the Senate and, of course, signed by the president, which he has already said that he will do. Again, let's be honest with what this is. This isn't voter enhancement. This isn't anything to ensure democracy. This is voter suppression, because who are the people who cannot get those IDs? The poor. Those are the working poor. Mothers and fathers who are working class. And most of those people don't vote Republican. With that said, dun, 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 well, goodness gracious, we've reached today's emotional support moment. For today's emotional support moment, let's talk about protest, peaceful protest. You know, the likes of which we saw at the Grammy Awards with Bad Bunny. Good speech. Sounded a lot like Mahatma Gandhi and or John Lennon. Well, anyway, here's a peaceful protest from Minneapolis that has a different kind of beat. Check it out. From KMSP, Fox 9 of all places in Minneapolis.
There have been many different types of protests.
And dozens of musicians banded together in downtown Minneapolis this afternoon to voice their opposition to ICE in Minnesota.
On the streets of Minneapolis,
I've never been more proud of this city.
the sounds of protest
Loud and proud and awesome. It gets your attention. It hypes everybody up. You just feel it in your soul, like, yes.
are marching to a brand new beat.
It's different, but it's a nice, peaceful protest. Absolutely shows people voices.
60 to 70 drummers on more than 24 corners throughout downtown
It's just nice to be a part of something bigger.
are using their talents to try to get ICE to change its tune.
We want ICE out of our city. We want ICE out of Minnesota. We don't agree with what the federal government has been doing to our people, to our state.
Drumming has always been a form of protest throughout the years. Drumming has always been a way to bring people together. You know, common pulse, common cause, common heartbeat. It's going to be loud, and it's going to be persistent, and it's going to be peaceful, and it's going to be joyous.
Rock and roll, baby. Anytime you got drumming, I'm in. Time to take some of your questions. Hit me with what you got over there, Lexi. Hi, Mary. How are you doing? This is a pet treat fee. Whoa, pet treat fee. $4.99 from Donna McMullen 5776. Thank you, Donna. I am free BGM 8856. Dems need to revolt and kick Schumer and Jeffries out. Well, we'll see how that happens. They'd have to take a vote to do it. Schumer is, if you try to kick him out, he's going to write you a strongly worded letter and then stand on the, he's the guy that stands in front of his lawn and goes, "You kids, get off my lawn." Yeah, it's time for younger voices in the House and in the Senate. We'll see what happens. The Democrats have to win the majority, and that's still up for grabs. Thank you, I am free. Janice Jackson, 2016. All the things that are happening now by Trump will all said in the open that they would do it if he became president, including the crypto. At some point, the people will not be able to use money in the United States. Well, yeah, that could be. I just want to reflect on the drumming for a minute. You know, it just, where was Purple? That was a Prince thing. Some of that drumming came from a Prince song. But anyway, what you're talking about is crypto being used. Crypto is being used. What you really need to look at, the old crypto is dead. The crypto that's hooked to the dollar is basically nothing more than money laundering, because what happens is you get it in crypto, you convert it to dollars, and the people who own the crypto take a cut, 5-10% off the top for converting it. That's what Donald Trump is doing, and that's his goal, just to bilk the Treasury, much like suing the Treasury for, what is it, 10 he wants at least $10 billion and he sued the IRS and the Treasury for releasing his IRS, his tax forms. Did he really have $10 billion worth of damage, or is it a money grab? Everything with Donnie is a money grab. That's what his crypto is. Thanks, Janice. Free Your Mind 1. Donald is a foreign asset. Why are Republicans okay with this? Because, Free Your Mind 1, free your mind to this. Because they're all in cahoots with Donnie, because they have all stapled their ship to his. At the end of the day, if he goes down, they go down, and they know it. But you are seeing some breakaway. The NRA pushed back pretty good against him after if you've ever seen the movie, The American President, the Rob Reiner movie, and Andrew Shepard, played by Michael Douglas, when he gets up and says he's going to pull back the crime bill and he's going to get the guns. That's what Donald told us on the South Lawn of the White House in one of his rare chopper talks of this administration. He's going to go after the guns. The Republicans aren't okay with that. Marjorie Taylor Greene has left MAGA. There are people who are beginning to see that the emperor has no clothes. The problem is, what do you give them as an option other than Donald Trump? That's what the Democrats have to answer. Thanks for your mind. Jackie 6035. Schumer will lack the balls to go after Republican criminals once Dems hold majority in Congress. Well, I'd like to see the Dems get the majority in Congress first. I think it's one step at a time, sweet Jesus. And right now, it looks like the Democrats can, but I'm not saying this because I don't like the Democrats. I'm not saying it because I don't like the Republicans. I'm just telling you a fact. In 43 years of covering this government, no one is best at snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory than the Democrats. If they get their shit together, they definitely have the impetus right now to win. But we'll see. It's a long 9 months until the next election. And with this administration, look, this is just Tuesday. Can you imagine what we've gone through in just a month? Where are we going to be 8 months from now? There's a lot of water still to go under the bridge. So we'll see what happens. Not that I disagree with you, by the way. Broken all broken. Why are Dems calling for investigations instead of doing their own? Well, the minority party has to call for the investigations. Once they're the majority party, they can do the investigations. They don't have the ability to have Congress investigate right now unless they can convince enough Republicans to do it. And as you see with Massey and others, there is some momentum building to go after Donald Trump, particularly after 2 American citizens were massacred in Minneapolis. Donald Trump would be the guy that would think that the patriots of the revolution were in the error for going after the British in the Boston Massacre. Just saying. Grok is the new Epstein. Seibler made my day. Now, you know what I think is funny about Epstein is, I don't think much is funny about Epstein, but Elon Musk is repeatedly buttsore that some of this stuff has come out that apparently, as freaky as some of the Epstein people were, they didn't trust Elon Musk. God bless him. He's just a malcontent anywhere he goes, and pretty soon he may not be able to go to France. Thank you, Seibler. Jackie again, the problem is the corrupt John Roberts Supreme Court. Well, that is one of the problems. And let's be honest about it. The real problem in the United States right now really isn't the U.S. Supreme Court as much as it is the inept and I guess neutered is the only way to look at it. I mean, neutered Congress, because they won't do any. They have taken no action or very few actions against Donald Trump. The Republicans have sold whatever soul they had to Donald Trump, who has no soul. And if you think I'm kidding about that, I refer to you to the press conference today. Well, it wasn't a press conference, press availability in the Oval Office, when Donald Trump started talking about his wife being a wonderful movie star and then said, hey, what's in it for me? That tells you who Donald is. Even when he jokes, it's all about what's in it for him. Always. End of story. Thank you again, Jackie. And Andrea Cohen, 1728. Brian, I'm so happy to see Bad Bunny at the Grammys piss off Trump, the Super Bowl halftime show, when Bad Bunny performs in Spanish. What I really liked was the speech. I got to tell you, to me, when, and I've got it. Let's see, I'll call it up real quick. So the part that's relevant. We are not savage. We are not animals. We are not aliens. We are humans, and we are Americans. Hate gets more powerful with more hate. And here's the part that's taken straight from Gandhi and used by John Lennon and now by Bad Bunny. Quote, the only thing that is more powerful than hate is love. And that's hard to do when we're as divisive as we are now. But I got to tell you, I believe in the First Amendment to the point where I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend to death your right to say it, even if I think it's BS. You can hate me, but you can't act on that hate. And that's what he was talking about, and that's what gave me hope. So thank you, Andrea. Susan Thompson. Oh, good to see you again, Susan. 5142. Check out Brian Karam's insightful articles on Salon. Well, thank you, Susan. www.salon.com/writers/Brian Karam. Well, thanks. Yeah, we're there once a week with comment and criticism of Donald Trump. And then, of course, I just found this out today. I apparently got Donald upset because I posted on a Substack posting, by the way. So you can go to, it's Reporter's Notebook on Substack. But I did post something. I am, and other reporters at the White House, apparently he sold his email list of reporters to his campaign or whatever he has. And he's still putting out emails trying to raise money. For what reason, we have no idea. No one's asked him. He won't answer my questions when I ask him. But he put out an email this past weekend that said he wanted me to answer a citizen-only survey, and he warned me, Brian, this is your last chance. You don't want me. Are you an illegal alien? Do you want me to send ICE after you? And I posted that and said, really? What idiot threatens to send ICE after me if I don't answer a survey? And he apparently got upset about that. It's now a Snopes thing. Look it up. But honest to God, folks, I can't make that stuff up. I didn't create the mailer. Donald Trump did. And he's as dangerous now as he ever was, and even more so. Thank you, Susan. Sheila Scott, 9619. Trump needs to be investigating. His corrupt president and his corrupt family need to be prosecuted for money laundering and fraud on tax returns and fraud on business practices. Yeah. I don't think anybody, or as the PEP secretary would say, no one in their right mind who's capable of cogent thought would think otherwise. The fact of the matter is he's lied about everything that I've since he's walked down the escalator more than 10 years ago. Every time I've asked him a question, he's lied to me. Every time I've checked out his facts, they don't. I can't. If Donald Trump told me to my face that the sun rises in the east, I am looking out my window at dawn to check, because I don't trust anything the man says. Sometimes I doubt if his name is Donald Trump. Thank you, Sheila. Andrea's back. The Clintons better testify in the public, not behind closed doors. I agree. I think look, these people they're public servants. They're not leaders. Leaders don't act this way. What kind of country would be led by anybody in either party, to be honest with you? There are a few exceptions, but they are public servants foremost. We vote them into office. They get temp jobs. They represent us. We pay their salary. They work for us. So all of them we should have more transparency in our government, not less. And that goes for whether you're a Democrat, Republican, a Druid, a Mormon, a Catholic, or if you're simply there. Dave from 7519. Does the plaintiff in a case seizing the Fulton County ballots break the chain of evidence, therefore rendering this evidence useless? Well, that's a good question, Dave. More importantly is, 5 years later, do we even know what still exists? Donald Trump is already hinting what he says is going to exist. And he brought in Tulsi Gabbard, who is what? A Russian operative? She's supposed to be guarding against foreign intervention. Are they going to come out and say that the Russians were behind it? The entire thing stinks to high heavens. Chain of evidence. You see that in Georgia, they're suing the federal government for doing this. I don't even know that you can make sure that all the documents and all the voters' tabulations are still there 5 years later. In fact, I would almost guarantee, knowing people and covering elections like I have, that they all aren't there. So I don't know what Donald Trump hopes to sell with this, but I guarantee it's to deflect from the drip, drip, drip of the fact that the Epstein files are coming out. And although he said in the White House today, it once again said, we should put it behind us. It's all over with now. Every time he says that, he only gets people angrier to go after him. So this is just deflection. And it's an attempt, by the way, to set up the fact that in November, he will try voter suppression in every blue state and blue district and blue precinct in the United States. That's a fact. Broken. Why do we need ID to vote when we need ID to register? Well, why do we need ID to vote when we need ID to register? Because voter suppression. End of story. There's no other reason for it. If you can present, and it's not ID, it's certain ID, right? If you need ID to register, then your driver's license should suffice when you show up to vote, right? But they're not going to let you do that. It's going to have to boil down to, your passport, a birth certificate, or a real ID, which still isn't available for millions of people across the country. Voter suppression is the answer. Thanks, Broken All Broken. I am free, BGM 8856. I still love that little cartoon there. Tulsi Gabbard and FBI raided an election place this weekend, stole everything. I don't know what they stole, didn't steal. I don't know, because I don't trust Tulsi Gabbard. B, I don't trust the FBI because of the DOJ is now run by Donald Trump. And if you just ask Donnie, he calls it his FBI. An independent FBI, most of the people that subscribe to that have left the FBI. So yes, what they've done is they're trying to create a paper trail that will lead to voter suppression and the overturning of election results if they don't favor Donald Trump's GOP in November. Snooks 460. Oh, look at it, little dog. that looks like my wife's dog. Save disenfranchises women and POC. Just what the felon ordered. Well, Save can disenfranchise the poor. It can disenfranchise women. It can disenfranchise pretty much anyone. But it's mostly going to do what the studies show. It will mostly disenfranchise the people who vote Democratic. Just what the felon ordered. Moving on. Joy to Farm 2. Costs money to obtain an ID. What about someone who doesn't have the necessary documents? As those cost money. What about the homeless? What about homeless people that want to vote? During COVID, one of the biggest fights I got into with Donald Trump's administration was the day I asked him, are they going to make testing available for the homeless? And I was told to shut up, and that no matter what I asked, I wasn't going to go viral with the question, as if I was trying to make myself the story. That's the way that that an oligarch and the way an authoritarian always operates. Flip the switch. The legitimate question is brought against the questioner. It does cost money. Consider all of those people who are going to be disenfranchised by this move, and start with the homeless, millions of whom probably will not be able to vote. And I doubt that they're going to vote for Trump unless he voluntarily turns over all the Trump towers in the United States and turns them into homeless housing. And I don't think that's going to happen. Thank you, Joy to Farm 2. Jane Hogston, question, Brian, will the people who are voting, will ICE be watching? Yes, I'm sure they will. And, the ICE situation still bothers me for a number of reasons. And it's bad enough that I see videotape of them thinking it's Call of Duty, Wow, it's just like Call of Duty. They're playing a game in their head with real consequences for an unarmed woman and a guy who had threatened them. And now that's being investigated as a murder. But more importantly about ICE, ICE will be watching because they know damn well that if the Democrats get the House and the Senate, that they're screwed, blued, and tattooed. And here's the reason why. Members of ICE have refused to follow police procedure in anything that they do. I'm personally tired, of seeing videotape of the shooting from the northwest quadrant, from the east-west quadrant. Here's slow-mo, here's this, here's that. Assuming that the very 40 officer-involved shootings in my life, I have covered one that was my first book. Here's the simple fact. They did not follow police procedures, accepted police procedures before, during, and after the shootings. You don't fire into a crowd. You don't fire after you disarm someone. By the way, after you fire, you don't flee the scene with a weapon. You hand your weapon over to your partner. You sit quietly until Internal Affairs shows up to investigate it, because now it is a crime scene. They have never treated it as such. The fact of the matter is, ICE will be watching because they're fearful of what will happen to them should they lose their funding and their impunity to act and their immunity from action as gifted to them by Stephen, I love my bald head, Miller. End of story. Susan again, $10. Brian, you promised me an emotional support moment with a guitar jam. Thanks for guest hosting tonight. Okay. I can get, I'll do a quick, right? I could do Dear Prudence, but not in tune. But any other time I will. Dear Prudence is a good one, and anything by Tom Petty in the key of D. Thanks, Susan. Paul Gustafsson, E5M, the first street shown in that piece is one of the best music venues in Minnesota. That's right. That's what I thought. Prince played there and even had his own balcony table. That's what I thought. I recognized one of them as from the last time I was in Minneapolis. Great music venue. And all right, here's a confession. The first time I saw Prince in concert, it was in the 70s. It was in Louisville, Kentucky. It was before the Annie Christensen tour. And he came out on stage in a diaper. And he opened, I can't remember who it was for. It may have been like the Allman Brothers or something. It was oddly incongruent, but that's the first time I saw Prince in concert. He came out in a diaper, but he could play the hell out of a guitar. So I ignored the diaper and listened to the guitar because as a musician, you gotta love a musician. Thanks, Paul. Carolyn, again, I don't trust Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, who does? That's like that. I don't trust Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't trust most politicians, but she's out of the mix and has signaled to, I'll tell you what she's done to MAGA and she's done to Donald. When she came out in her retirement speech from Congress, and by the way, here's why you shouldn't trust her. She stuck around even though she apparently had problems with Donald until she got her lifetime free health care, which, you know, some of them get after a certain amount of time in Congress. Then she quit. So she made money off of it. But when she came out and said there is no fourth level chess game, there is no plan, she was signaling to MAGA and to QAnon that the emperor has no clothes. And the NRA siding with her in this shows that the very core of Donald Trump's MAGA is now going, what the hell are we in for? It won't take much for a Democrat to beat a Republican this fall. I offer this as a public service to any Democrat running for office. If you will just put together a commercial that says, I, state your name, running for, state the office, promise to support and defend the U.S. Constitution as a candidate before I even get into office, I guarantee you got a shot. The bar is that low. If you respect the Constitution, that's what even MAGA is looking for now, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you listen to them. What they bought was a pig in a poke. Donald Trump listened to what they heard and then told them back to their face what they wanted. Donald Trump doesn't care about a wall. Donald Trump doesn't care about immigration. Donald Trump apparently funded some abortions. Donald Trump doesn't care about any of that. Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump, but he told them what they wanted to hear and they believed him. And now, finally, some of them are going, well, wait just a goddamn minute. I want my gun. And so they're firing back. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of them. You don't have to trust Marjorie Taylor Greene. What you do have to trust are their actions, because they do speak louder than words, and the actions coming from that end of the political spectrum has changed remarkably. It doesn't take a progressive Democrat to win the race. It just takes a Democrat who will speak common sense and listen to the people. Philip Chi, question, do you think Congress is corrupted from various influences, big business, Russian, dark money, AI? Well, of course they are. I think that's well documented. I don't think there's, you look at many congressmen go into, the one that I liked was the congressman, all I had was $58 in my pocket when I ran. And then, later became a millionaire. A lot of them make money off their offices. I like what, it was Eric Swalwell who told me, he said, Brian, a lot of these people couldn't get a job anywhere else. He said, if I don't have a job in Congress, I can find a job someplace else. I have skills. But think of the people who are in Congress who have no skills, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's no longer in Congress, and God knows what she's doing next. Maybe she'll be a waitress. I don't know. Maybe she'll find a job. But the fact of the matter is, Congress is not only corrupted from various influences. Take a look at the PACs. If you want to take the corruption out of Congress, money ruins everything. Money has ruined my profession. I always talk about that, the problem of big money in journalism. You need diversity of opinions. You need diversity of ownership. The same thing goes for Congress. You need diversity of representation. You need younger representation. You need people who could get a job elsewhere and haven't sold their soul to get into Congress. I don't think there's not a whole lot of debate going on as to whether or not Congress is corrupted. The debate is on how do we solve it, and unfortunately, it's Congress doing it. Think about it this way. Congress adjourned over the Christmas vacation without debating affordable health care for all of us. Meanwhile, they went home and have free health care for life. That's corrupt in and of itself. They got theirs, we get ours. That's not what we put them in office for. Thanks, Philip. Dave, again, what a lot of MAGAs are unaware of is Puerto Rico is American. Well, what a lot of people are unaware, a lot of MAGA people are unaware of is Puerto Rico is not only American, it's part of America. It's not a state, although it could be. It is a territory. And my grandmother lived there with my grandfather for 5 years in the 60s when he worked for Sears and ran Sears, the Sears stores out of San Juan. And beautiful place filled with Americans. From top to bottom, every single one of them are American. I don't know what to tell you. And by the way, Spanish as a language in the United States, we took over a lot of the western part of the United States that used to be part of Mexico. So, Spanish was the first language. Spanish was the second language I learned in school before French, before Arabic, before Greek, before Latin. And I learned Latin, in the Catholic Church. And no, the only priests we ever worried about were drunks, not pedophiles, but they were around. Anyway, thanks, Dave. I digress. But yes, they're unaware Puerto Rico is America. Philip, again, question, Brian, where is this century's Senator Estes Kefauver? We need someone with that level of integrity. What we really need is we need that. We need a Bobby Kennedy and not the junior one with a worm in his head. And we need a Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt was famous for trust busting. And today I can't get anyone to even listen to the fact that we have, trusts are now, conglomerates, which are the last time we busted up a conglomerate like that was the Bell Telephone Company. And we busted that up. We haven't done that in a long time. And when I talked to the Biden administration, when I wrote a book called Free the Press, and I said, look, we need to bust up the media monopolies. And when I talked to members of that, and I thought I had someone in Biden who would do it, but they wouldn't take it up. So I'm sorry, go ahead. You had one up there, Lexi. ICE and ISIS, I see no difference. Masked terrorists. Hey now, tough room, I'm telling you. Well, one is purely American, and the other is, well, I don't know. I don't know what ISIS is. Anyway, go ahead. Jackie, good job, Brian. You're always doing something right if you offend him. Well, thank you, Kendra, USA, CK1985. All I do is ask questions. It was my mentor, Sam Donaldson, who said it isn't the questions you should be worried about. He was often called rude. And look, I haven't done anything different than what Sam or Helen or Dan Rather or Peter Jennings or anybody else who ever visited that room did. I simply ask the questions. You may call me rude, but I think it's far ruder not to answer the damn question. I think that's the issue. You can ask, and I may have told this story here before. I'll tell it again as a point. They keep saying, don't ask stupid questions. Well, there's no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid answers. The young reporter who once asked Betty Ford if her kids had smoked pot. Everybody standing in that briefing thought he was an absolute moron until Betty Ford said yes. And then he was an instant, genius. The fact of the matter is you don't know where the answers are what they're going to be. Ask the question. I don't even care if it's a stupid one. Just ask the question. Sounds like a podcast. Oh, it is mine. Anyway, thanks, Kendra. Best Hobbit. Well, like Mary said, he can't stand being called a loser. Not only can he not stand being called a loser, Donald Trump can't stand anyone. The last question I asked, right, was, and I haven't gotten an answer to, is he ever been wrong? Has he, according to the PEP secretary and everybody in his administration, they fawn over him. I'm telling you, the cabinet meeting, the meeting today in the Oval Office, just people kissing his, political backside. And all they do continually is do that and never once call him. And I've never seen a president always have to be right so much. Many people are saying it. Donald Trump's the best. I'm right all the time. I get tired of hearing it. He can't stand being called a loser. What he really can't stand is anybody questioning him at all because he's a weak-kneed SOB. And I said it here. You heard it first. Best Hobbit. Sam Donaldson was one of my favorite reporters back in the day. He was no respecter of persons and got to the point. Excellent reporter. Sam was one of my mentors. He's still a good friend of mine. I love him to death. He's in his 90s now, and he's as cantankerous as he's always been. And I'll tell you something about Sam. My favorite incident with Sam was one time he and Helen, and he used to follow Helen around like I did. I said, why do you follow him around? He goes, I want to follow the best. So there was a ABC, Ronald Reagan was at ABC's new offices to christen them and welcome, to the area. And at that point in time, Sam popped out of the woodwork in the offices and started asking him questions, and it got Roone Arledge, who ran ABC, really mad. And Sam said, well, if you don't like it, I guess you could fire me. And Roone said, well, that's not a bad idea. And before anything else could happen, it was Ronald Reagan who stepped up and said, well, that's just Sam being Sam. and let it go. And because he deflated the situation, nothing happened to Sam. Can you imagine Donald Trump ever coming to the defense of a reporter? Today, Caitlin Collins asked him 2 questions in the Oval Office, and he told her she was a terrible reporter and nobody watches CNN and he can't stand her. Now, he's done that to me and I fired back at him. But he is, he even said to her, she's such a pretty girl, but she doesn't smile. Who the hell's going to smile around Donald Trump? That's not my job. I'm not a clown. I'm not there to smile. Neither was Sam. And one of my other favorite Sam stories was when he was, and I was there for this, when Ronald Reagan walked out to go to the helicopter one day. Everyone was telling me, they pretend like they can't hear, and you always see the presidents put their ear up. And Sam saw him limping and said, I see you limping, Mr. President. Does that mean you're a lame duck, sir? And Reagan turned around and said, I heard that, Sam, and then kept on walking. So, yes, Sam was still one of my favorite of all times. I think he had it down. He knew what he was doing. Excellent reporter. Thank you, Bright Brigid, for bringing that to my attention. The hell with Janice Jackson's back. The hell with boycotting and all that stuff. The only thing we should be concentrating on is why and who is going to take Donald Trump out of that office and try him for treason. And again, he will be. No one's going to take Donnie out of the office. And here's why. I've talked to a lot of congressmen and senators, and a lot of them are braver privately than they are publicly, especially the Republicans. He's not going anywhere till after the midterm elections. And if he can rig the midterm elections the way he likes, he won't go anywhere. He'll die in office. There are plenty of people who think that by November, J.D. Vance may well be the president because Donald Trump has passed out in his, morning soup or his cornflakes and is lying on his back, babbling like a cicada and can't, put a sentence together. That's a possibility. I don't think they'll use the 25th Amendment either. I think he would have to die in office for anything to happen. And I don't ever pray for people to die. Sorry, it's just the way I'm built. But it's a fact that it could happen. And then J.D. Vance would be the president. After the midterm election, should the Democrats and Republicans should the Democrats own the House and the Senate, you could see an impeachment. But I think you're going to see Pam Bondi impeached. I definitely think that you're going to see someone charge Stephen Miller with crimes against humanity or war crimes or something along those lines. And Donald Trump could face impeachment, but I'll put it this way. I do not, and I still don't believe that Donald Trump will face impeachment unless they whip the votes and they know ahead of time that they've got enough votes in the Senate to convict him. And at that point in time, if Donald Trump is around and Donald Trump is facing impeachment and Donald Trump is shown that he will lose, he might then pull a Richard Nixon, because that's what it took for Nixon to resign. It took Republicans going to him and telling him, you've got it lost. They're going to impeach you and you're going to be convicted. So you might as well resign. Donald Trump cannot be pried out of the Oval Office with a crowbar. And, that's my considered opinion from covering him. Thanks, Janice. Best Hobbit. I feel there were ulterior motives for finally releasing the Epstein files. Duh. Why did they suddenly decide to start following the law? Well, I think they were facing a lot of pressure, and I think they did it hurriedly. And I think that at the end of the day, the FOIA office is so overwhelmed. You're going to see and I count on this every time I file a FOIA request, you're going to see stuff that was redacted, being released, things that weren't redacted are now redacted. It's a mess. And because what they're hoping to do, what they've really hoped to do, and what you see with Donald Trump today, saying, we need to move past this. Again, he's saying we need to move past this. I think America's ready to move on. No, they're not. What you're seeing is that by flooding the zone with millions and millions of documents, meaning millions and millions of pages, it's going to take thousands and thousands of people to go through this in any timely fashion. So it's by flooding the zone, he's going to deflect with other stuff. And like I said, my great fear with Donald Trump is that he will deflect, he will burn it all down to rule over the embers. So we're going to see increased, this is why Marjorie Taylor Greene left him and others. America first. Now he's talking about bombing Iran again, trying to make a deal, taking oil from Venezuela, all the things that he does, all the atrocities that he's involved in, including immigration, including shooting 2 citizens, is to deflect from the Epstein files. So his motive to release them, he knew he had to. He released them as he did to try and stifle us looking at them in any semblance of order. But what he's forgot is that this has angered many of his own followers because he campaigned on the fact that he would release these files. So they didn't suddenly decide to start following the law. It came late. They were supposed to follow it at the end of the year, and now they're only getting around to it. Thanks, Best Hobbit. Lauren 7861 question, Brian. When if Vance becomes president, who becomes VP? Well, VP, well, he'll have to nominate someone to become VP, and then they'll have to be, given the okay by Congress. That's how that works, I believe. That's exactly what happened with Ford. Karnak the Magnificent. Ooh, I love Karnak. $5. I grew up in PR in the 60s. I may have crossed paths with your granddad. Well, you may have. That's it. My grandfather was a lawyer and a judge in Louisville, Kentucky. And a grandfather on the other side, my mom's side, was just a blue collar worker who worked in a brewery in Kentucky. And always, every time we went down to Butchertown, it always smelled like, which was part of Louisville, always smelled like a brewery. But, he was grandpa. Thanks, Karnak. R. Guthrie, 1099. Do you have your 1099 in? I hear this. Was there ever a problem with ICE before this Trump administration? Here's how ICE operated prior to Trump. ICE worked in teams, and they went after the criminals that they had to bring to justice. The murderers, the thieves, the drug dealers, the violent offenders, all the violent criminals that were in. And here's how that works. You have to actually investigate a little bit. So these investigative teams would take their time to track down where these people are. Because I've got news for you. The violent criminals that Donald Trump says we all want out of our country, we do, but they're not hanging out at the Home Depot. They're not going to college where my son goes to school. They're not hanging out at the grocery store. You have to find them where they live and breathe, dealing drugs. They're living on the dark side of humanity. It takes Columbos. It takes real work. And that's what ICE was doing beforehand. What Donald Trump did was hire a bunch of thugs, and it's suspected some of them are Proud Boys, certainly a lot of Call of Duty enthusiasts, and gave them a big amount of money to join up and march in the streets and scare the living hell out of people, mostly in blue states. And if you really think that this is about immigration, let me remind you that Minneapolis and Minnesota do not have the immigrant population that you see in the red states of Texas and Florida. And yet there's no ICE raids there. Wonder why. It's all voter suppression. End of story. Thanks you, Ruth. Susan's back. Friends, please support independent media. Like, subscribe, share, and comment. Pre-recorded videos drop 7 days a week. Watch, like, share, and comment on them. Support the Committee to Protect Journalists. Support IRE, Investigative Reporters and Editor. Support Reporters Without Borders. These organizations are around to provide independent reporters what we need, and what we need is legal representation. And that, my friends, is how you also support independent journalists. Those who get their houses raided that work for the Washington Post, well, they have the Washington Post and those attorneys on retainer. We don't. So support your independent press through those organizations. You can also see on my Substack, I list all the organizations you can support. Please do so. I want to thank you, everyone. Oh, check out Brian Karem's book, Free the Press. The link is in my podcast page. Well, thank you. Susan, I love you, by the way. Thank you so much. And is that Shirley Jones and Oprah? I love Shirley. I remember when she was with the Partridge Family. But anyway, I want to thank everyone for allowing me into your lives today. It's always a pleasure answering your questions. It's really nice to talk to a well-informed audience who ask intelligent questions. And to my little sister, Mary, I love you to death. I hope you're the best of times. I'll catch all of you next time. Thanks for joining me.